Hey friends, it's Roger coming at you. I am back in the Ninja Fortress of Productivity. I am super excited to bring this to you this week. It's April 27th, Tuesday, that this is going up. And yeah, I am exceptionally fired up to bring this week's video to you because it actually just came to me in almost like an epiphany late last week. Epiphany is a little bit of a strong word, but just through a conversation that I was having with somebody, I made a connection in my own mind about a super effective way to access what we call the optimal performance mindset, which we've actually been talking about on this blog for the last 4 weeks. A really easy way to access this that hardly anybody ever makes as a connection to high performance. A simple switch that you can make in your mind about something that we encounter every day to unlock endless possibilities and tons of energy and way better results for you. That's what we're going to focus on this week. Let's go. I was on the road last week. What a concept. I was actually out in various parts of the country speaking to groups of people live in rooms. I found that all by itself to be extremely hopeful. And we were doing one of our Train Your Brain Foundation sessions, and somebody raised a question about what if I just feel we were talking about how everybody starts off being pretty terrible in most businesses in the beginning. And somebody raised the question about it was kind of funny when he raised it because he said, so you're saying it's okay for me to feel like I'm super sucky at the beginning? It's okay for me to feel like a failure? And it sort of led us down this rabbit hole where we got talking about the issue of failure. And through this conversation, in front of 75 people, I made this connection in my brain where I went, you know what? We've been dealing with, I mean, every entrepreneur does, but more so than maybe ever, we have just been dealing with failure. And I realized that, you know what? Failure is, in fact, the gateway to top performance. It's not just something to be overcome by a motivational speech. If you understand failure and approach it correctly, it's actually the most efficient way to get where you want to go. So I thought I would share that with you, right? Because listen, if you're watching this, you're an achievement-oriented person. Likely you're involved in selling something or growing a business or putting together a book of business or leading a team. And the result is you're out there mixing it up and you encounter failure all the time. In your own life, in your own business, and in those of your teams, right? And so understanding and dealing with the issue of failure correctly, it really just requires a simple understanding. And I would say it's like a two-part understanding that when you get this, you'll succeed a lot more quickly through failure. What am I talking about? Well, number one, the thing that kind of came out of my mouth when I was talking to this group is that failure is, Brian Tracy taught me this. He said that failure is not a person, failure is just an event. And when I heard that, I went, wow, you know what? That really just puts things in a whole new light. Failure is an event. It is not a person. What that means is if you go out and fall flat on your face and people tell you no, or you don't get the project done on time, or you somehow run out of money for a little while, or you do something that would be perceived as a failure, please understand that fearing failure, as common as it is, it's literally nothing more than an irrational story that we make up in our mind because it cannot define you. It does not define you, failure. I'll say this again. Failure is simply an event. It's not a person. So by definition, that means that you can fail over and over again and never be a failure, because being a failure simply doesn't exist. So number one, understand that failure is just an event. It's something that happens, right? It's not a person, which means that when you fail, that does not make you a loser. It cannot make you a loser or a failure. It's just something that happened. So it's really nothing to fear. In fact, understanding number two that I wanted to share with you that kind of came to me later helps you understand that it's not something to be feared, that failure is actually something that probably ought to be embraced. It probably ought to be welcomed in a non-judgmental way. Because failure is also, in addition to just being an event, it is also, in almost every case, it is actually the most efficient way to succeed. In most cases, failing at something and then learning and growing from the experience of that is usually the most efficient way to succeed at whatever you're trying to succeed in. Now, we could think about this in terms of, listen, if you've been paying any attention to me, you know I love making sports analogies and physical fitness analogies. So this is a really easy one to understand. If you want to make a muscle grow stronger, any muscle in your body, do you know what you have to do? You have to, this is just exercise science, you have to take that muscle and push it until failure, until you can't do the thing anymore. And if you don't push that muscle until it fails, the muscle will not grow. The most efficient way to grow your muscles in size or strength is through the failure of that muscle. In fact, you can't get stronger in your muscles any other way except failure. It's literally the only way to grow your muscles. I'm going to say this is true in getting where you want to go. Stick with me on this analogy because it made sense to me and hopefully it'll make sense to you. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. Okay, and recently I had to drive to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I did a little research. I did a little geographic research, and I thought this was very interesting, that Madison, Wisconsin is right about 87 degrees west longitude. It's right near the 87, it's in between the 87th and 88th meridian in the Western Hemisphere. Milwaukee is at 89 degrees west longitude. Yeah, longitude, that's right. So where I live is 87 degrees. Where I had to drive to is 89 degrees. What does that mean? It means that there's a lot of different routes from Madison to Milwaukee, but all of them must cross 88 degrees. They have to go across through the 88th meridian. I can go up north and then come down. I can go south and come back up, or I can go straight to Milwaukee. But however I get there, I got to go through 88 degrees. You following me on this? I'm going to say that the same thing is, by the way, there's no judgment about that. That's just the way it is. Like, the most efficient way for me to get from Madison, Wisconsin to Milwaukee, Wisconsin is just to go straight across. Like, that's the fastest way to get there. It's like, it just goes straight east to west to east, boom, you're through it. And the quicker you get through the 88th meridian, the quicker you get to Milwaukee. Now, there is actually one exception to this. If you understand the physics of what I'm talking about, you might kind of go, well, there is actually a way that you could get from Madison to Milwaukee without crossing the 88th meridian. And you've probably figured this out. What could I do? I could actually start, I'm trying to get east, about 90 miles east. I could actually start driving west, and then I could literally, I would have to circle the entire globe and drive 25,000 miles, which is fundamentally impossible anyways, because you got to cross oceans and islands and that sort of thing. But that would be the way to get from Madison to Milwaukee without crossing the 88th meridian. And obviously that would be silly. That would be incredibly inefficient. And why would I ever do that unless I had some like irrational fear of the 88th meridian? Why am I talking about all this? How many times do we do things that are inefficient, take us way longer, simply because we're afraid of failure? Run into that battle this week. Don't fear it. Embrace it. Understand that fear, number one, cannot define you. And two, it's usually the most efficient way to succeed. So go out there and get the no. Go out there and face plant. Get out there and go for it. And when you do that, when you embrace, hey, whatever outcome there is, it allows you to drop into the optimal performance mindset of being clear, about being elevated in your energy, and about being loose, like we talked about last week. And it allows that to happen in a super instantaneous, organic, and wonderful way. So embrace it. Failure, it's the hidden key to the optimal performance mindset. So go enjoy it. Have an awesome week. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. Send me your comments and your feedback, and just go have an awesome week.